Once upon a time, in a small town called Aremo, there lived a boy named Ayo. From a young age, Ayo was different from the other children in his village. He had a bright smile and a mind full of creativity. But there was something about Ayo that puzzled everyone, including his family. While other children his age were beginning to read and write, Ayo struggled with the simplest of words. Letters seemed to dance around the page, and no matter how hard he tried, they wouldn't settle into any recognizable patterns. Ayo's father, Mr. Ade, was a stern man. He believed in discipline and hard work, and he couldn't understand why his son was so far behind in school. Every evening, Mr. Ade would sit Ayo down at the kitchen table, demanding that he read aloud from his school books. But the words tangled in Ayo's mouth, and he would stutter, stumble, and eventually fall silent, staring helplessly at the pages in front of him. Frustration would build in Mr. Ade's chest until it overflowed in anger. He thought his son was being lazy or stubborn, refusing to learn out of sheer defiance. In his frustration, Mr. Ade often raised his hand against Ayo, thinking that a firm hand would force the boy to focus. The more Ayo was punished, the more withdrawn he became, retreating into a world where he felt safe, his world of art. From a young age, Ayo had always been drawn to colors and shapes. He would sit for hours under the big oak tree in their backyard, sketching the world as he saw it. The trees, the birds, the people of the village, everything came alive on the paper under Ayo's hands. His drawings were his escape, a place where the confusion of words and letters couldn't touch him. But his artistic talent was little comfort in school. Ayo's teachers, just like his father, couldn't understand why he was so slow to learn. They would scold him for not paying attention, punish him for failing to complete his assignments, and mock him in front of his classmates. The other children followed their lead, taunting Ayo mercilessly. They called him names, laughed at his mistakes, and made him feel like he was worthless. Ayo's world became a lonely place, where his only solace was his art. The one person who refused to give up on Ayo was his mother, Mrs. Ade. She saw the pain in her son's eyes and knew that something wasn't right. She would sit with him every night after Mr. Ade had gone to bed, trying to teach him in a gentle, patient way. But despite her best efforts, Ayo just couldn't seem to grasp the concept. Mrs. Ade would often find herself crying quietly at night, praying for a way to help her son. She knew that there was something special about Ayo, but she couldn't figure out how to bring it out. One day, after a particular frustrating week, Mr. Ade made a decision. He believed that what Ayo needed was a strict, disciplined environment where he would have no choice but to learn. So, he decided to send Ayo to a boarding school in another city. It was a prestigious institution known for its rigorous academic standards and strict code of conduct. Mr. Ade was convinced that this was what his son needed to finally get on track. When Ayo arrived at the boarding school, he felt more alone than ever. The taunts and mockery from his new classmates were even worse than back home. The teachers were even stricter, and the punishments for failure were harsher. Ayo spent most of his days in fear, his confidence shrinking with each passing day. He would retreat to the art room whenever he could, finding solace in the quiet corners where he could sketch in peace. But something changed when a new art teacher joined the school. Mr. Salem was a kind and observant man who had a keen eye for talent. He noticed Ayo's drawings pinned to the classroom wall one day and was immediately struck by the depth and emotion. The lines were bold yet delicate, the colors vibrant and full of life. Mr. Salem saw something in Ayo's art that no one else had noticed. One afternoon, he found Ayo sitting alone in the art room, his head bent over a sketchbook. Mr. Salem approached him gently and asked to see what he was working on. Ayo hesitated but handed over the sketchbook. As Mr. Salem flipped through the pages, He was amazed by the talents before him. He saw a boy with an incredible gift, but also a boy who was carrying a heavy burden. Mr. Salem knew the signs. He recognized in Ayo the same struggles he had faced as a child. He too had struggled with reading and writing, and he too had been misunderstood by his teachers and parents. It wasn't until a teacher had recognized his dyslexia and helped him overcome it that Mr. Salem had been able to flourish. He decided that he would do the same for Ayo. He called a meeting with Ayo's parents, explaining what he suspected, that Ayo had dyslexia, a learning disability that made it difficult for him to read and write, but had no effect on his intelligence or creativity. Mr. Salem explained that Ayo's brain simply processed information differently, and that with the right teaching method, Ayo could learn to read and write just like any other child. But Mr. Ade was skeptical. He couldn't believe that his son's struggle were due to something as simple as a learning disability. To him, it sounded like an excuse for laziness. Mrs. Ade, however, was more open-minded. She had seen how hard Ayo tried, how much he wanted to learn but couldn't, and she was willing to give Mr. Salem's method a chance. Back at school, Mr. Salem began working with Ayo in a new way. Instead of forcing him to read from books, he used art to teach him. He started by showing Ayo how letters could be like drawings, how each letter had its own shape and form. He illustrated each letter with pictures. An A became the roof of a house, a B became a butterfly's wings, and so on. Slowly, the letters began to make sense to Ayo. They weren't just random shapes on a page anymore. They were connected to the world he understood. As the days turned into weeks, Ayo's confidence began to grow. He started to read small words and then bigger ones. The more he learned, the more his world opened up. Mr. Salem's patience and understanding were like a beacon of hope for Ayo, guiding him out of the darkness of confusion and into the light of understanding. Word of Ayo's progress spread through the school, and people began to take notice. When the school announced that they would be holding a general art competition, Ayo decided to enter. It was a chance to show everyone that he was more than just the boy who struggled in class. He was an artist, and he had something to say. The day of the competition arrived, and the school was buzzing with excitement. Special guests, including artists and local dignitaries, had been invited to judge the event. The students displayed their artwork in the grand hall, each piece more impressive than the last. But when the judges came to Ayo's piece, they were stunned into silence. Ayo had painted a large canvas filled with vibrant colors and intricate details. At the center was a boy standing on a mountain, looking out over a vast landscape. The boy's expression was one of determination and hope, and behind him were the shadows of his struggles, slowly fading away into the distance. It was a powerful piece, filled with emotion and meaning. The judges didn't need much time to deliberate. Ayo was declared the overall best, his art the most outstanding. The crowd erupted in applause, and for the first time in his life, Ayo felt truly seen and appreciated. His heart swelled with pride as he accepted the award, his eyes scanning the crowd for Mr. Salem, who was clapping the loudest of all. But the surprises didn't end there. The school announced that Ayo's painting would be used as the cover of the new school yearbook. His work would be seen by students and parents all over the country, as his name would be known far and wide. Ayo's heart raced with excitement and joy. He had gone from being the boy who was mocked and ridiculed to a celebrated artist. As the weeks passed, Ayo's life changed in ways he had never imagined. He became known not just in his school but throughout the region as a talented artist. Invitations to art exhibitions and competitions began to pour in. Mr. Ade, who had once been so harsh and unforgiving, began to see his son in a new light. He realized that he had been wrong to judge Ayo so harshly, and he began to apologize for the pain he had caused. The bond between father and son began to heal, and they found new ways to connect. Mr. Ade even began to take an interest in Ayo's art. Mr. Salem became more than just a teacher to Ayo. He became a mentor and a friend. He continued to help Ayo with his reading and writing, but more importantly, he nurtured Ayo's talent and encouraged him to pursue his dreams. Together, they spent hours in the arts room, working on new projects and exploring new techniques. Ayo's journey was far from over, but he had come a long way from the lonely, frightened boy who had arrived at the boarding school. He had discovered his strength, his talent, and his voice, and with Mr. Salem by his side, he knew that there was nothing he couldn't achieve. Ayo's life after the art competition was like stepping into a whole new world. The recognition he received for his artwork opened doors he never knew existed. His painting on the school yearbook cover brought him attention not just from other students but from teachers and visitors as well. Ayo, who had once been invisible in the classroom, now found himself being greeted warmly by everyone he met. But beyond the applause and accolades, what mattered most to Ayo was the newfound confidence in him. He no longer felt small or insignificant. For the first time in his life, he believed that he could achieve something great, and this belief fueled his passion to learn, grow, and push his artistic boundaries even further. Mr. Salem, who had become a close mentor to Ayo, continued to guide him through his academic and artistic journey. The two spent countless hours together in the arts room, where Mr. Salem introduced Ayo to different mediums and techniques. He taught Ayo how to blend colors to create depth, how to use light and shadow to evoke emotion, and how to express his thoughts and feelings through his art. Ayo soaks up everything like a sponge, eager to learn from the man who had seen the potential in him when no one else had. However, Ayo's journey wasn't without its challenges. Although his confidence was growing, the scars from his past, both physical and emotional, were still there. The memories of his father's anger, his classmates' taunts, and his own feelings of inadequacy would sometimes resurface, threatening to drag him back into the dark place. But every time those doubts crept in, Ayo would turn to his art. His sketchbook became his refuge, a place where he could confront his fears and transform them into something beautiful. At home, the relationship between Ayo and his parents also began to change. Mr. Ade, who had once been so harsh and unforgiving, was now making a conscious effort to connect with his son. He started to show an interest in Ayo's art, asking questions about his latest projects and even attending some of his exhibitions. Although it was difficult for Mr. Ade to fully understand the world of art, he tried his best to support Ayo in his own way. Mrs. Ade, who had always been Ayo's biggest supporter, was overjoyed to see her son thriving. She continued to help him with his studies, using the methods that Mr. Salem had taught them. With her patience and encouragement, Ayo's reading and writing skills gradually improved. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of frustration, but Ayo was determined to succeed. He knew that his art and his education were both important, and he was willing to work hard at both. One day, a letter arrived at the school that would change Ayo's life forever. It was an invitation to participate in a national art competition for young artists. The competition was prestigious, with participants from all over the country, and the winner would receive a scholarship to a renowned art school. When Mr. Salem showed Ayo the letter, he could hardly believe it. The thought of competition on a national stage was both thrilling and terrifying. But Mr. Salem believed in Ayo, and he encouraged him to take the chance. Together, they began to prepare for the competition. Ayo spent every spare moment in the art room, working on a piece that would showcase his unique style and voice. He wanted to create something that would tell his story, the story of a boy who had struggled, who had faced challenges, but who had found his way through art. The day of the competition arrived, and Ayo was filled with nervous excitement. The event was held in a grand gallery in the city, with rows of paintings and sculptures displayed under bright lights. As Ayo walked through the gallery, he saw the incredible talent of the other participants. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if he wasn't good enough? What if his work didn't measure up? But then he remembered Mr. Salim's word. Art isn't about being the best. It's about expressing yourself, telling your story, and connecting with others. With those words in mind, Ayo took a deep breath and focused on the task at hand. His piece, titled From Shadows to Light, was a large, vibrant painting that depicted his journey from the darkness of his struggles with dyslexia to the light of newfound confidence. The canvas was filled with swirling colors, representing the chaos of his early life, gradually giving way to clear, bright lines that formed a figure of a boy standing tall and proud. It was a deeply personal piece, full of emotion and meaning. When the judges came to Ayo's painting, they were visibly moved. They saw not just a technically impressed piece, but a story of resilience and triumph. Ayo watched from a distance, his heart pounding, as the judges discussed his work. Finally, they nodded in agreement and moved on. After what felt like an eternity, the results were announced. Ayo stood among the other participants, his hands clenched tightly at his sides. The tension in the room was palpable as the names were called. Third place, second place, then finally the winner. Ayo Ade for From Shadows to Light. Ayo's heart skipped a beat. He had won. The room erupted in applause, and Ayo was overcome with emotion. Tears welled up in his eyes as he stepped forward to accept the award. The scholarship, the recognition, the validation of his talent, it was all so overwhelming. As he stood on that stage, holding the award in his hands, Ayo realized that this was just the beginning of his journey. There were still challenges ahead, but now he knew that he could face them. He had found his voice through art, and he was ready to share it with the world. Back in school, Ayo was welcomed as a hero. His classmates, who had once mocked him, now looked at him with admiration and respect. Even the teachers who had doubted him were forced to reconsider their opinions. Ayo's success was a reminder that every child has their own unique talent, and that understanding and support can make all the difference. Mr. Salem, of course, was proud beyond words. He had always known that Ayo had something special, and seeing him recognized on a national stage was a moment of pure joy. But more than that, Mr. Salem was proud of the young man Ayo had become, confident, resilient, and determined to make his mark on the world. As the school year drew to a close, Ayo was faced with a big decision. The scholarship he had won would take him to an art school far away, where he could hone his skills and learn from some of the best artists in the country. It was a dream come true, but it also meant leaving behind everything he knew: his family, his friends, and Mr. Salem, who had become like a second father to him. After much thought and discussion with his parents and Mr. Salem, Ayo made his decision. He would go to the art school, but he promised to stay in touch with everyone back home. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with both excitement and sadness. But Ayo knew that this was the next step in his journey, and he was ready to take it. On the day of his departure, the entire school gathered to see him off. Mr. Ade, who had come to terms with his son's part, gave Ayo a tight hug, his eyes brimming with pride. Mrs. Ade kissed his forehead, reminding him to take care of himself and to never stop believing in his dreams. And Mr. Salem, with a smile that spoke volumes, simply said, "This is just the beginning, Ayo. The world is waiting for you." As the train pulled out of the station, Ayo looked out at the faces of the people who had shaped his life, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had come so far, but he knew that his journey was far from over. With his sketchbook in hand and a heart full of hope, Ayo set off on the next chapter of his life, ready to turn his dreams into reality. The story of Ayo passed across to us some important lessons, which are understanding and patience. Ayo's struggles with dyslexia were misunderstood by those around him, leading to unnecessary punishment and suffering. It shows the importance of understanding and patience when dealing with children who learn differently. The power of mentorship. Mr. Salem's belief in Ayo and his tailored approach to teaching unlocked Ayo's potential. It highlights the impact a caring mentor can have on a child's life. The value of individuality. Ayo's unique talent in art, once recognized and nurtured, became the source of his success. This reveals the importance of embracing and developing one's individual strengths.